This is CNN Newsroom live from Los Angeles. Ahead this hour, the US moves closer to the biggest tax overhaul the country has seen in more than 30 years, and an overwhelming number of Americans don't want it. We've been listening to the Republican senators there after that historic vote in the US Senate passing the tax overhaul bill. We just heard from at the end there from the Senate leader, Republican Mitch McConnell, essentially shaping the parameters for the battle for the midterm elections when Americans go to vote in November of 2018. Let's talk more about this. We have with us our panel, Dave Jacobson, John Thomas, and Peter Mathews, all with us. Okay, it was interesting. You know, we just heard from Mitch McConnell how this election will be framed. They're going to, this is, if you want to keep these tax cuts, make sure the Republicans keep both houses. Dave.
This was a massive shakedown by con artists and hucksters with the likes of Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell. The fact of the matter is, this is a giveaway to big corporations, to Wall Street, and to millionaires and billionaires. And it raises taxes on millions of hardworking families across the country, from California to New York to New Jersey.
What did you hear, John?
I mean, I think Mitch actually hit all the right points and exactly the kind of message you're going to need going into the midterms. I mean, one is, you know, you say we have tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires. He's talking about making America more competitive again, to be able to compete against the likes of China and Europe that have lower corporate rates than we do. So about bringing jobs back home. Real tax breaks for 80% of Americans, and that messaging going into the midterms about we want you to keep getting these tax breaks and they want to take them away is something I'm willing to fight on any day.
And Peter, how do you see it all sort of shaping up? Obviously, the Republicans now have to go out and sell this bill. I mean, McConnell said if we can't sell this to the American people, we should get into another line of work.
Well, they may have to.
Yeah, because this is a hard sell.
But John, here's something you have to look at also. The results of the tax cuts, the deficits. You know, we have a $20 trillion debt, and we're paying a couple $100 billion a year just on the interest alone on the debt. Where's the money for investment in infrastructure? You can't grow the economy unless you have a basic backbone, the infrastructure. And that's not being done. The American Society of Civil Engineers say you have to have $2 trillion to reinvest in our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our sewer systems, our water systems. That hasn't been done. It's not going to be done with this kind of deficit.
Yeah. So I guess, John, you know, the good news is the president gets to sign something for real, not an executive order, but some kind of rule legislative accomplishment by the end of the year. As we've been saying, the bad news is it's really unpopular. A CNN poll has it at 33% approval rating. It is so disliked that the president's approval numbers are at 35% by comparison. Hillary Clinton has high approval numbers at 36%. So how do you take it from a 33% approval or a 28% approval to something that people actually embrace?
When average Americans start getting up to $2,100 rebates in their mailboxes, I think that does the talking. Right now, I think a lot of Americans are confused and, quite frankly, misled by the rhetoric on the left about what this bill is going to do for them. So the proof will be in the pudding, because we got off to the wrong start. We've lost the messaging battle, but the proof will be in the pudding.
What is inaccurate, though, about the balance here? That someone on $1 million plus a year walks away with a $70,000 tax break, which is basically 3.3%, whereas the average household walks away with less than $900, which is 1.5%. That's in it, right? That's a fact.
That is in it, but when we're talking about the messaging, and Dave's talking, all he's talking about is what millionaires and billionaires get, not what middle class gets. Not the rebates up to $2,100 for working class Americans. Sometimes it's up to 13% of their total income they're getting back.
Middle class families deserve a tax cut. Poor people deserve a tax cut. Rich people don't. We've got unprecedented income inequality in America. The 1%, the millionaires and billionaires, are getting wealthier every day, and hardworking families are seeing stagnant wages. What we need is Peter's right, investment in infrastructure to create good-paying middle-class jobs.
That's more
job
spending.
Training, apprenticeship programs.
More spending and taking from my money.
John, what about the investment? We're talking about, cutting back on schools. We're talking about cutting back on so many programs that people actually need that could hurt the demand side of the economy. And we need to have that. If we don't have that, you can't have growth in the private sector.
Because we believe giving everyday Americans more money back to spend in the economy and reinvest in jobs is a way to do it, not growing the size of the government or forcing Americans
I understand
to do
your philosophy, but the individual mandate was also eliminated, which is basically going to destroy Obamacare and cost for the rates, insurance rates are going to go way up.
So you're 13 million people who will be effectively thrown out of healthcare because of this tax plan. Yeah,
That were forced.
Right.
A lot were forced.
Sure,
into
but that basically
program.
means an end to the affordable health care.
Yes, it does.
And where's the replacement?
Well, what's great about this is it will force the conversation to actually do something and not just to actually meaningfully replace what Obamacare was.
Okay, the president has continued to talk about how he will be financially worse off under this tax plan. CNN's Jim Acosta had a bit of a back and forth at the White House briefing with spokesperson Sarah Huckabee Sanders about what that actually means. Listen to this.
The president did say that this tax cut bill would cost him a fortune. That was false, right?
No, because on the personal side, this actually could impact the president in a large way.
As you look at it, how it would balance out corporate versus personal if he's going to come out
I'm not
ahead?
sure if he's done a side-by-side, but I know that there are a number of provisions that would negatively impact the president personally, and so we contend that those comments are still very consistent.
Sarah Sanders has a really tough job. But Dave, so now we know, so maybe, personally he's going to be, a little bit hard done by, but, from a business point of view, it's off to the races.
Well, and that's why Forbes magazine today put out a story estimating that he's going to get about $11 million in tax cuts. That's according to his 2005 returns. We don't know how much money he's worth as of today. He never released his tax returns to the American people. Apparently, he still says that they're under audit. There's nothing that has shown that he can't legally release them to the American public. And I think at the end of the day, the public deserves to know how much Donald Trump is going to personally benefit from this tax cut.
Are you alleging that Donald Trump pushed tax reform so he could get richer?
Donald Trump is looking out for his bottom line, and he wants to fatten his wallet. And so at the end of the day, this is a guy, Donald Trump only, come on, you can't deny, Donald Trump only cares about Donald Trump.
And Peter, at least, probably not. I mean, most likely not. But there, for some people, there is a perception, Peter, that the president's going to bank on this.
Especially when he doesn't put his holdings into a real blind trust. He knows what's going on because he's talking to his sons every day. And there's a conflict of interest between a public official making decisions that are good for the whole country and getting it caught up in his own private gain. And by the way, the estate tax alone is going to give him huge millions of dollars for his children to keep in their pockets.
I would imagine he's already planned for the estate tax. Many people have.
Was it Gary Cohn, the economic advisor, who said only morons pay the estate tax?
I heard that.
Yeah.
It's actually the small families that get screwed the most because they don't have the ability to get around the estate tax. But the point is, I mean, we can play these games. I mean, the president is going to be better off because he has successful businesses and that he's going to see a reduction. But he also is paying more personal tax because he lives on those coasts. He lives in New York. That is high state and local.
But this
taxes.
is a perfect illustration of why the American public thinks that the economy is rigged in favor of the wealthy, corporations and Wall Street, and the company and those entities exploit our existing system, our corrupt system, at their expense. They're footing the bill. This is Robin Hood in reverse.
And to that point, there was a provision slipped into this bill on Friday, the real estate provision, which is all kind of complicated.
It is,
but 14 senators, Republican senators who voted yes for this tax bill, will benefit enormously from that provision, which was slipped in at the last minute.
And it doesn't benefit doctors or lawyers or engineers, just real estate people. One more thing, you have to have a semblance of fairness here. Why not give the middle class and working people a tax cut instead of just the wealthiest people so that they can grow the economy from the ground up?
80%.
But, John, that's such a pittance compared to what the millionaires are getting.
Well, because they pay a lot more taxes to begin with.
Yeah, but that should be shifted, in my view. Otherwise, you won't have a middle class much longer. And if you look at the countries that have done that, you have much larger middle class where the wealthiest people pay higher rates, the middle class pays a middle rate, and the poor pay virtually nothing. So then there's also programs to help the poor have a chance to become middle class. That's the American dream, right?
There's also the question that this increases,
you don't agree with that philosophy.
Increases the deficit by $1.5 trillion. And in return for that, you get, what, about 1% maybe 1-point-something% economic growth, which, Dave, I think when they do the math, it's not a good investment at the end of the day compared to like a stimulus package or infrastructure spending, which we're yet to see.
Precisely. Look, we've seen trickle-down economics before. It didn't work in the 80s. It didn't work during George W. Bush's presidency. It ain't going to work in 2018. The fact of the matter is, you're right. Peter brought this up earlier. Investments in infrastructure, investments in education, making college affordable. And by the way, going back to the healthcare issue, healthcare should be a right, not a privilege just for those who can afford it. This strips away healthcare for millions of people. That's a values argument.
I don't want government forcing low-quality healthcare and forcing me to buy it.
Can I show you how healthcare reform would help, the real reform? In Canada, it costs $1,000 less to make a car over there. The same car made over here, it costs more because our employers are paying for the healthcare. In Canada, it's a single-payer system paid for more.
Okay, well, the president is is Donald Trump. He is up. Maybe he's watching us. He has been tweeting. This is what he put out. The United States Senate just passed the biggest in history tax cut and reform bill. Terrible individual mandate, Obamacare repealed, goes to the House tomorrow morning for a final vote. If approved, there will be a news conference at the White House at approximately 1 p.m. Eastern time. I guess we'll all be watching. But clearly, you know, Dave, the president's got something to boast about.
Yeah, he's taken a victory lap. I mean, the fact of the matter is he hasn't, throughout the course of this entire first year in office, he hasn't gotten any milestone pieces of legislation through the Congress. This is an incredibly unpopular bill. The American people rejected it. Donald Trump saw past that, and he's going to claim credit for passing some meaningful piece of legislation. Democrats and most Americans are against it, but he's still going to have that victory lap.
And I guess, you know, Peter, at the end of the day, if American voters out there, if they're feeling richer, if they feel like their job is more secure, if their wages are going up, which may not be a result of this tax bill, it could just be the result because it's a booming economy anyway, Donald Trump's going to get the credit.
Well, you wouldn't argue with success, but I don't think it's going to be successful.
Right.
It'll be the reverse, in my view, from what happened in the past in history.
But I'm just saying, John, that on this point, the economy is doing well. And now there is a narrative set up that regardless of how well it does, you know, if it continues to do well, the stock market continues to do well, unemployment continues to go down, which was a result of a lot of Obama policies, you know, from earlier on, Donald Trump gets the credit.
Well, John, wages have to go up also.
Right.
Well, Trump should, I mean, that's politics, but Trump should take credit, but also markets and job creators are forward-looking. We don't look at what Obama did a year ago. We look at where we're going to be in 2018, 2019. So if the economy keeps going strong and picks up speed, at some point, I think it is fair to say that Donald Trump does deserve some credit here.
But there's a sinister part, it seems, to the way this has been structured. You know, the biggest cuts are up front, and then they dwindle away to nothing, and then there is that, you know, cut-off point because of the repeal. They basically, expire, which seems incredibly political in the motivation of how this has all been done, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's Axios put out a report earlier today that by 2027, taxes are going to go up by $83 billion on hardworking families. And that's just the cold, hard reality. Paul Ryan says, you know, we're going to get to that. We're going to fix that. The fact of the matter is, earlier this week, there was a story that Paul Ryan is considering retiring. He can't make that promise.
Yeah. And Peter, last word to you on all this. You know, if it works, it's obviously sets up Donald Trump to be in an excellent position, you know, for the midterms and maybe, you know, for a second term. If it doesn't, what
failure. He won't be a two-term president in that case, and it'll come pretty quickly, I think.
Well, you're going
if that's the case.
Impeachment will be the discussion
Well,
because we'll lose both houses,
Yeah.
and he will be impeached if that happens. So literally, Donald Trump is living and dying by this tax bill, and I like his odds.
Okay. We shall see.
We shall.
Okay, Dave and John and Peter, thanks so much.